was it that came down on me that night? A conjuring. I held on to that moment in light just to make it alive. Sit out there in the covering, in the baskings of a holy night, and I was lucid and conscious, and hovering like a firefly. My mind stretched out on the canopy, it put its arms out slow, and I heard the whispers of silence floating down from the radio. So come on, I'm ready now. I got the feeling, honey, like I'm ready to roll. You see, I'm not gonna wait till the end, 'cause I got the burning fire in the bed of my soul. Saw the light from a kettle gun, 16 days under a southern sun, and there were times when I thought,
Hello, it is 4:18 p.m. in the afternoon, Saturday, June 14th, 2025. Mark Kulak, Housatonic.Live, and I'm going to redo the reading that I did the other day of the substack post that I wrote. Again, this is evidence of how long it actually takes to do an original substack post, that you don't use AI and you don't have a team. Even though the majority of the research was already done for it, there was still a lot of other details to do. And the title of it is Li-Meng Yan, Who Is She Really? We've All Been Lied to. My energy today is it's off. I just need to have faith. Need to keep pushing forward and have faith that this is all going to work out. There were there were 4 assassination attempts, 2 which were successful, resulting in fatalities today in the state of Minnesota amongst 2 state level elected political officers. And I don't know what the motivation was. And there's protests all around the country, I think with signs that say no kings. And there was encouragement to have riots. And there was a military parade scheduled. And then there's escalating violence in the Middle East. Escalating. And then military commanders killed and missiles. And it's tough. It's tough. And I have a photo. I don't have it readily available. I won't show it because I'll have to go through all my personal iPhoto stuff. It was early 2017, I think. And I did not vote for Trump in 2016, President Trump. And but I was, have to admittedly, encouraged at the time. Given, when I saw his inauguration speech and knowing how even back then, of course, the drug epidemic in the United States was one of the reasons why I even started to do online research in the first place. And I went there with a big sign, probably 2 foot by 3 foot or 3 foot by 4 foot. I don't know. It was one of the bigger signs that I could get, and I had it reinforced on some thin plywood, I think. And one side, it was a encouragement for, and one sign was a clear evidence of how I had fallen victim to the all of the propaganda online, and it was encouragement for ensuring safety of Coptic Christians. And that's what happens. You get on Twitter, And this Twitter algorithm shows you everything that people program it to. So you have to understand. I turn on Twitter, and my area is I want to ensure more visibility to the drug problem. So that somehow the algorithm labels me as a conservative. Okay, maybe I'm conservative in some things, maybe more than half. I don't know. I never really did the over-under on it. But it assumes I'm conservative, and then therefore it shows me pictures of heads rolling all over the place. Like you go to the Middle East, and you can't walk out of the bus without tripping all over heads. They're just all over the place. They clog up sewer drains, and I don't mean to make too much of a light of it, but it's nothing. I mean, it would be every other tweet was a decapitated head. That's what Twitter was giving me. I had no idea it was that well programmed. So, knowing, being a Christian, and learning, this much about it, I was like, boy, it sucks right now for what's happening with some of the Christian populations in the Middle East. The other side of my billboard, though, was a chart about drug overdose deaths in the United States of America. And I met several people at this March for Trump rally in Washington, D.C. that I took my nephew to. And it was a great experience, I thought that maybe something good, something positive was happening. I had no idea the levels of psychological operations which were unfolding. And all I wanted to do, with my nephew, in a peaceful, loving way, just find some other people and, maybe find ways to raise awareness of these things. And because I have no idea how to solve it. All I know is that there is no solution without awareness. So everything that is a solution is inaccessible until there's awareness. So given that the fact that that's the first step, even though it doesn't seem to solve the problem in of itself, I know it is the first step to anything. Or at the very least, it's a gating step. You can't get to the other side without going through that. So, believe it or not, the number of fatal overdoses per year almost doubled. At some point after that, I think it was in 2021 was the worst. And of course, our adult son died in 2022. And it's, I just have to keep reminding people that. That's what got me into this, okay? It's not a sporting event. It doesn't really help the family at all. It's terrible, the finances, and obviously it was probably career-ending, the decision I made to do this. And, when you see today all of these other escalations, and still not 1 hour has been spent at a public, national level to really let it sink in how catastrophic the drug epidemic has been in the United States and continues to be. It's deflating. And then you see more assassinations. You're like, wow, I just don't know where this goes. All I can do is stay positive. And, we're all here. We're all dying. All of us. We're all scared. We all have our insecurities. And I think most people have a whole lot more in common than they do different than each other. And it's really heartbreaking just to see. So my energy is a little bit low today. It's just like really, isn't someone at the operator panel just willing to say, no, I'm not going to push out any more of this stuff? So I guess all I could do is keep doing my thing and showing passion when appropriate and so on. So, our 25th wedding anniversary is coming up, and we're probably going to be changing our plans now because of all the stuff happening around the country and financial stress, and it's deflating. Not to mention, I like cloudy days. I'm just going to leave this in here. I think this is a good rant to leave in here. It's a bit cloudy today in New England. Not that it matters, but it just feels like, come on, just come on. Let's get going here. This crap is not necessary. And I don't see any of these conflicts that are escalating how sometimes you got to get through something really you have to do the exercises to get stronger. You have to go through the stress, the challenges, the pain. And right now I see these things and I'm like, I don't even know what's on the other side. I don't see how they help. Everything just seems to be destructive. If there's a tough exercise to go through, then let's do it. But I don't even understand how they are constructive at all. So I'm going to try to perk myself up a little bit and read this article, which I updated this morning. So you can find my Substack by going to Housatonic.Live or Housatonicits.com. And I only do maybe one Substack post a month, maybe 6 weeks. That's what happens when you're actually doing the writing and the researching and the archiving. If anyone wants to, some people have actually said that they are willing to pay to be supporters of it, which is remarkable. I never even really considered it. I didn't think enough people would be willing to volunteer anything, given the fact that I mostly maintain archival pages and do video broadcasting. But I may enable that. Also, as of this moment, in spite of several thousand hours of work collectively over the last few years, and I'm not including all the research I've done, has 33 likes and 5 re-substacks. So if you could get get a little bit more visibility, I'll appreciate it. Tweet it, not that it seems to help all that much. Restack it, like it. I don't know. Whatever you can. That will be good. But also, the very fact that it doesn't get traction is in and of itself, because it's an absolute metadata bonanza. It's in and of itself validity of what we've been trying to say. So let's just do it. This article explores who Li-Meng Yan is, using all public sources attained over the last 5 years. This article will not be reviewing Li-Meng Yan's 2020 research papers, which were all preprints on, quote, origin of SARS-CoV-2, unquote. Spoiler alert. Reading this article will convince you that no insight of value could possibly exist in those research papers, so don't bother reading them. So here's the basic Li-Meng Yan story, or what you heard. Here's the basic Li-Meng Yan story, somewhat simplified as generally understood by both mainstream media and the majority of popular alternative media sources in the United States of America. They are listed in chronological order. 1. Li-Meng Yan is a Chinese virologist born in or native of Qingdao, Qingdao, Shandong, China. Her exact age is not known. Year of birth estimated as 1983 or 1984, as her birthday was never disclosed. 2. In the year 2014, Li-Meng Yan completed a Doctor of Medicine in Ophthalmology, which is the diagnosis, treatment, and surgery of eye diseases and disorders, from Southern Medical University in Guangzhou, China. Guangzhou is a journey of 2,000 kilometers of roads. It's 20 hours of driving by car from Qingdao. So Guangzhou is only 1 to 2 hours of driving from Hong Kong. As a comparison, a drive from Qingdao to Guangzhou, so where Li-Meng Yan said she was born, to where she went to medical school, would be like driving from New York City to Oklahoma City in the United States of America, 2,000 kilometers about. Curiously, but possibly, or most likely just a coincidence, there's a Dr. Li-Meng Yan, who is the Chinese doctor who is said to be the whistleblower that raising awareness of how bad things are somewhere in the Wuhan area. He was also an ophthalmologist. It's just odd. A lot of people with eye problems in China, I didn't know that. It's probably, sometimes things just are coincidences, but it's worth noting. Bullet 3. In the year 2014, after completing her Doctor of Medicine, Li-Meng Yan became a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Hong Kong, HKU. It could be conservatively assumed that Li-Meng Yan started at Hong Kong University in 2014. This February 2015 journal article, which we reference here, includes Li-Meng Yan's name on it. Bullet 4. Li-Meng Yan's academic scientific focus changed from ophthalmology to virology while at Hong Kong University. Her name was not on any published papers in the years 2016 or 2017. By the way, this 2015 paper is related to ophthalmology. Okay. Bullet 5. During the year 2018, while at Hong Kong University, Li-Meng Yan was listed as a contributor, not as a lead, on only a single published research paper. The paper is available here, and I have links to the paper on ResearchGate and Sci-Hub. Fun fact, the primary funding for this paper was from the United States of America's NIAID. That's an interesting fact. And its very first reference is a 2006 publication written by Dr. Anthony Fauci. If you click on the Sci-Hub link, which I provided, you can actually see the paper here. And incidentally, it's called The Hurdles from Bench to Bedside in the Realization and Implementation of a Universal Flu Vaccine. So her only published paper, only one published paper, other than the ophthalmology paper related in 2015, was about a universal flu vaccine. That's quite a leap. And it involved Sophie Valkenburg, Nancy Leung, and Leo Poon, and Benjamin Cowling. And that's a whole lot of British intelligence influence right there. And if you didn't believe me about the citations here, under references, the very first reference is Anthony Fauci, Pandemic Influenza Threat and Preparedness from Emerging Infectious Diseases in 2006, which itself, interestingly enough, is probably a book that was initially written by Joshua Lederberg. Bullet 6. Li-Meng Yan claims that in late 2019, she was asked by her advisor, Leo Poon, a Hong Kong scientist with academic history in the United Kingdom, to research the strange SARS-like outbreak in China. Li-Meng Yan stated that she investigated and she then determined both that it was indeed SARS and that China was covering it up by downplaying its severity. According to Yan, her advisor did not allow her to report this publicly. Note, these claims were not shared until her first public appearance in July, or I should say on July 10th, 2020, in the United States of America on Fox News. I have links to all of these. In an 80-minute interview in January of 2020, YouTube host Wang Dingjiang, also known as Lu Day, said he heard from an unnamed whistleblower who told him China was not being transparent about the outbreak in Wuhan. Wang, or Lu Day, described his source, who was later revealed to be Yan, as, quote, the world's absolute top coronavirus expert, unquote. Although Yan worked at one of the world's top virology labs, she was fairly new to the field of virology and had not studied coronaviruses before the COVID-19 pandemic. This paragraph, I have it in double quotes because I took this particular paragraph, word for word from a Wikipedia page. Bullet 8. Li-Meng Yan was identified as a co-contributor on two Hong Kong University papers published in early 2020. One was published after she left. The first one was Viral Dynamics in Mild and Severe Cases of COVID-19, published in The Lancet, March 2020. The other one was Pathogenesis and Transmission of SARS-CoV-2 in Golden Hamsters, July 2020. And I just use your common sense. There's no way someone can go from having no published papers at all, okay, and not even be in virology in 2014, 2015, still in ophthalmology, one paper on influenza vaccines, generic influenza vaccines in 2018, co-authored with a bunch of other people, to having the potential, the capability even, to be serious contributors on these papers. It's just very, very unlikely, if not impossible. But she was listed as a co-contributor just the same. Bullet 9. Li-Meng Yan said she believed the situation was dire. And on April 28, 2020, she escaped to the United States of America, where she could eventually tell her story to the world, as she said. Li-Meng Yan said she had to leave her husband behind. And Li-Meng Yan added in an August 6, 2020 interview by the Epoch Times that her parents were threatened, but no specifics were given about the nature of the threat. Bullet 10. Li-Meng Yan's public appearances began on July 10th, 2020, about 10 weeks after arriving in the United States of America. Her story highlighted both a coronavirus of Chinese research origin and a cover-up by the Chinese government regarding the severity of the situation in China and ultimately for the world. This story attained much visibility, but this visibility was predominantly on internet and alt media, such as Steve Bannon's War Room and the Epoch Times, and as we've already shown on Fox News in the United States. Hong Kong University immediately released a press release on July 11th, 2020, day after, that Li-Meng Yan was no longer at university. The notice was vague and did not say when she left, and it remains open to interpretation, meaning she might have left a few days, a few weeks, a few months, or even more before that. It's a very vague statement. This notification also says that, quote, Dr. Li-Meng Yan never conducted any research on human-to-human transmission of the novel coronavirus at Hong Kong University during December 2019 and January 2020. It's an interesting statement. So Hong Kong University is, of course, they're going to have some influence from both China, maybe even the Chinese Communist Party, but also a lot of influence internally from Hong Kong and from the scientists who are Indian and Sri Lankan, most of which are also dual citizens with the United Kingdom. So the nature of this statement is it's distancing itself and what Hong Kong University said and Li-Meng Yan. So there's a lot of levels of deception and orchestration here, but it's worth considering. Okay, so this is something that could have come straight out of the Chinese Communist Party, Communist government. Within Hong Kong University, there's a lot of sources here, so take everything with a little bit of salt. Bullet 11. Li-Meng Yan's story has often been referenced by Fox News, conservative media, and many alt-media sites as evidence of a virus of laboratory origin and the potential role of China in a cover-up. Bullet 12. Li-Meng Yan's story and her statements about the CCP were called into question in fall 2020 by outlets such as Vox, the New York Times, and the Washington Post, with a focus on how her escape was planned and funded by Steve Bannon and Miles Guo of the conservative media. The implication was that Li-Meng Yan was part of a pro-Trump conservative conspiracy to smear the Chinese Communist Party and highlighted Li-Meng Yan's claims that the CCP intentionally released a biological weapon on the world. Bullet 13. Li-Meng Yan has continued to tell her story to dozens of internet outlets and even began her own podcast in the United States of America. In 2021, she joined a tour of several locations in the United States of America with other, quote, COVID dissidents, unquote, such as Dr. Ryan Cole, Dr. Robert Malone, and Dr. Richard Urso. Some of these included telling her story in Christian churches, where she would break into tears while sitting under a cross while telling her truth. So now this next section here, now that we got what people generally have heard, the next section is Housatonic.Live clarifications and amendments to the Li-Meng Yan story, the story that you heard. The first of 5, and I have 5 different subsections here. The first one is Li-Meng Yan's husband, in-laws, and her prior or pre-2020 life in the United States of America. According to the most up-to-date Wikipedia page for Li-Meng Yan, there is no mention of Li-Meng Yan's marital status or having a husband. A selection from the July 10th, 2020 article from Fox News reads as follows, quote, Li-Meng Yan made the decision to leave Hong Kong in April 2020, but things got complicated when her husband of 6 years, who also worked at her lab, discovered the telephone call between his wife and the blogger, that's the YouTube host Wang Dingjiang, also known as Lu Day. Li-Meng Yan told Fox News she begged her husband to go with her, and says while her spouse, a reputable scientist himself, had initially been supportive of her research, he suddenly had a change of heart. He was totally pissed off, Li-Meng Yan said. He blamed me, tried to ruin my confidence. He said they will kill all of us, unquote. Shocked and hurt, Yan made the decision to leave without him. She got her ticket to the United States on April 27th, and she was on a flight the next day. That's the end of the quoted section. So, 6 years before the year 2020 would be 2014. Thus, Li-Meng Yan suggests she was married in 2014, but she did not say the name of her husband. Li-Meng Yan then says that she left her pissed off and confidence-ruining husband behind. We are not aware of Li-Meng Yan expanding on this part of her story in any subsequent interview. The absence of any marital information on the Wikipedia page for Li-Meng Yan could be interpreted as her being permanently separated or even divorced. However, there is an alternative explanation. Li-Meng Yan has, without ever explicitly saying so, suggested that she has never been to the United States of America to savor the freedom until her arrival on April 28, 2020. But Li-Meng Yan has been in the United States before, which is something she has never specifically stated. And it is possible Li-Meng Yan has been in the United States of America for years or maybe even for decades before this date. And let us explain. Li-Meng Yan was married in the United States of America in the year 2014 in New York City and in Manhattan. The man Li-Meng Yan married, who is Sri Lankan, perhaps dual citizen with the United States, has been in the United States of America a rather long time. His name is Ranawaka Arashiej Prasad Mahendra Pereira, or we'll just say Ranawaka APM Pereira. At a minimum, he was in the United States of America in 2014 for his wedding to Li-Meng Yan, but Ranawaka may have resided in the United States before 2014 based on a review of his LinkedIn profile, and as we will see, based upon his parents. It was stated that Ranawaka APM Pereira worked in the Hong Kong University laboratory with Li-Meng Yan between 2014 and 2020, and it is true that Ranawaka was at Hong Kong University, as shown by this year 2010 tweet. He has more than 30 papers co-authored with Dr. Malik Peiris. That's right, Li-Meng Yan's husband has co-authored 30 papers, 30, with the scientist who first isolated SARS. And I'm going to repeat that one more time. Li-Meng Yan's husband has co-authored 30 papers with the scientist who first isolated SARS in 2003. Meaning Li-Meng Yan's family and immediate circle of friends and professional colleagues basically include the very narrative of SARS itself. Thus, according to Li-Meng Yan's July 10, 2020 Fox News article, if she was married for 6 years, that means that Ranawaka APM Pereira was her pissed-off husband who chose to stay in Hong Kong in April of 2020. But if his LinkedIn page is accurate, Li-Meng Yan could not have left her pissed-off husband in Hong Kong in April of 2020 because at that time he was already in New Jersey or the Philadelphia metropolitan area. He had already left Hong Kong and started working in the United States. Li-Meng Yan's in-laws, Dr. Leonage P. Pereira and her mother-in-law, Pin Yu Pereira, have been in the United States of America working as senior researchers for the National Cancer Institute and for the National Institutes of Health Department of VA, Veteran Affairs, for Veteran Administration for over 20 years. Technically speaking, they are now, as of the year 2025, both within the organization, or I should say at least her father-in-law, now led by Dr. Jayanta Bhattacharya, who was also born in India, a point that you may see more relevant later on in this article. When did Dr. Li-Meng Yan ever mention any of this? Li-Meng Yan's in-laws have been paid collectively many millions of dollars of salary by the United States of America and, of course, U.S. taxpayers over the last 20-plus years. With respect to residency, whitepages.com identifies Li-Meng Yan's in-laws, that's the parents of Ranawaka APM Pereira, as residing in Rockville, Maryland area since 1994, full-time. That is 25 years before the start of COVID-19. And a study of Ranawaka APM Pereira, the husband of Li-Meng Yan, and his parents, in-laws, her in-laws, Li-Meng Yan's in-laws, yields this diagram, which you can click on and peruse. Li-Meng Yan did work in the WHO reference laboratory for SARS. That's this laboratory in Hong Kong University. but this university laboratory is a notably special place in the history of SARS. Like I said, the director of this laboratory is Malik Peiris, also Sri Lankan like her father-in-law, with extensive education in the United Kingdom, and is the man who, as we stated earlier, first isolated SARS in 2003. So to simplify, a substantial part of both SARS pandemics, 2003 and the current one, were defined by Li-Meng Yan's advisor, which could be just a coincidence, but Li-Meng Yan's in-laws have also been top collaborators with Malik Peiris over those 20 years for the United States of America, receiving both NCI, National Cancer Institute, and NIAID funding, and that's Fauci's organization, as well as her husband since 2014, Ranwaka APM Pereira. This is perhaps why Li-Meng Yan, who is an ophthalmologist at best and not a virologist, got a role or any role in this laboratory. She is absolutely not, according to that YouTube podcaster, the world leader on coronaviruses. And she didn't just coincidentally work in the WHO SARS reference laboratory. Both her husband and her in-laws have been working with the very team that discovered SARS in 2003. You could say the Hong Kong University SARS lab is SARS. Fun fact, by the way, the main American super spreader of SARS 2003 is known, and this is Johnny Chen, only because of a Wall Street Journal article written by Matthew Pottinger, who went on in 2020 to repeat his SARS pandemic influence by leading the call for lockdowns in the United States of America. So you also have a Pottinger in the pot. Back to Li-Meng Yan's wedding photo from 2014, which can be found only in Li-Meng Yan's July 10, 2020 Fox News article. Note, it is the oldest known available photo of Li-Meng Yan as well. Also, curiously, it's the only one that I've ever seen her without glasses. Of course, wedding photo, if you have to wear glasses all the time, that's probably a time you take your glasses off. But I don't know. It's curious. And you can go through the lineup of the people there. And so I grew up in southwestern Connecticut in the city of Bridgeport, hence the name of my program, Housatonic, which is both named after the Housatonic River, and I just always love that name, and is also a hat tip to my Schaghticoke relatives. It's a small Native American tribe in the which was nation. It's a weird nation, though. It's the only one that ever lost federal recognition because they determined it to actually be not sustained in existence for 800 or 1,000 years or whatever it was. And mostly it was a refugee group that of people from other nations and runaway slaves, both blacks and Scots and everything else, that wound up having to camp by this river in a crappy mosquito-filled area on the Housatonic. That's basically what the Schaghticoke group was, and it just became its own thing after a while. But anyways, so the reason why I mention this, New York City was my home city, the big city closest to me anyways, growing up, not Boston. And the wedding photo that you can see them in is most likely taken in New Jersey or southern New York State. And although the faces are pixelated, her father-in-law is there to the left of Li-Meng Yan, and I believe to the right of Li-Meng Yan are her husband. That would be Ranwaka APM Pereira, and then her mother-in-law. Note, I have previously thought that the photo may have Li-Meng Yan's own parents in it, but I believe, I'm almost certain right now, that is an incorrect statement, and I apologize for that. Were Li-Meng Yan's own biological parents also at this 2014 wedding? Big weddings usually have hundreds of photos, and this is surely not the only one, but this is surely the only one available that we know of. In July 2020, Li-Meng Yan has said her parents were arrested by the CCP. That's possible, but only if her parents were in China in 2020, and were they? Were they in the United States of America in 2014 for this wedding? Were they in the United States in 2014 up until the present date? They just visit the United States and go back if they did go to that wedding. We have no information on them. Therefore, it is reasonable to consider the possibility that Li-Meng Yan's parents have been in the United States of America, possibly for many years. given what we've already discovered and the nature of what we've discovered and what hasn't been disclosed, because that would help explain why Li-Meng Yan speaks the way she does, or explain the way Li-Meng Yan speaks. And I have several bullets here. Bullet 1, Li-Meng Yan has a deep, and I mean extensive, knowledge of the English vocabulary. Listen to her rally the audience against the Chinese Communist Party with Steve Bannon on July 29, 2020. She speaks with more fervor, more confidence, more certainty than most people who have only speak English their whole lives. For someone that, it's a remote second language, it's odd. It's possible. That in and of itself is possible, but it's odd. But 2, in hundreds of hours of audio, at least up until the present, Li-Meng Yan has never once struggled to think of the English word for a Mandarin one. That's odd. I've never seen something like that before. Bullet 3, Li-Meng Yan has never accidentally said anything in Mandarin. Mandarin, when her intent was to say it in English first. Bullet 4, sometimes Li-Meng Yan has an accent change when she says sorry. So she said the wrong date at one of these rallies, and then instead of saying sorry, she said sorry. You could hear her accent, her normal voice came through because she was focused on getting the date correct. So every once in a while, you'll hear the strong Chinese accent that she is always using, projecting, just disappear. And that's not normal. So, and she sounds momentarily like a woman who grew up in New York region, coincidentally, where her marriage took place. If she suddenly sounded like she grew up in Kentucky, but her marriage is in New York City, that would be a little strange. Or grew up in, I'm trying to think of areas with more pronounced accents. Minnesota. But no, it was clearly the accent matched the area where her wedding license was. Bullet 5, and now more than 5 full years since coming to the United States of America in April 2020, according to her, Li-Meng Yan sounds no different today than the day she first arrived. Zero progress. The people of China are still, according to Li-Meng Yan, afraid CCP will make disappear. But it's obvious that Li-Meng Yan knows it should be afraid the CCP will make them disappear. And if she didn't know it in 2020, she should know this by now in 2025. But that's the dilemma. Without a continued exaggerated fake Chinese accent, Li-Meng Yan may or would sound like she grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut, or in New Rochelle, and that would not be good. Just to clarify, we know that Li-Meng Yan was in Hong Kong for at least a little while, perhaps 3 to 4 years at most, or maybe even less. Here's a photo of her at the Hong Kong University Laboratory of Leo Poon. This photo was used in a 2018 PowerPoint slide deck that Li-Meng used as the Real Event 201 in October 2018 held in Hong Kong. So let's get into that now. As a matter of fact, her husband is also in there too. Let's see here. I think that's her husband there. Him or him. Maybe it's the guy in the far back. So I think her husband is also there. All right. So now the second subsection of why, of adding to the base story that you've heard. Bullet 2, Event 201, the real Event 201 in October 2018 in Hong Kong, where Li-Meng Yan presented. If you have ever had any shred of skepticism about any aspect of the COVID-19 pandemic, and if you did a search online, you almost certainly would have learned about Event 201, a planned event in New York City, funded in part by the Bill and Melinda Gates Fund or Foundation, which predicted many aspects of COVID-19 with near perfect accuracy. Not all, but quite a few. And even though this is seen by many as evidence of a conspiracy, The website Event 201 remained online for years after the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, although they now no longer own the domain. Also, the Event 201 videos are still available on YouTube and are not censored, and they have never been censored. But just step back for a moment. If there really was clear evidence that world governments, in particular China and the United States, conspired to create a pandemic that would kill millions, would evidence of that remain online, uncensored, and easily available? The answer is no. It would have been deleted with extreme urgency, but it was not. And why? Because Event 201 was scheduled, recorded, and made to be as visible as possible, precisely because that is what the real conspirators of COVID-19 wanted all of us to see. Now imagine if there was an event similar to Event 201, but the similar event occurred exactly 1 year earlier, October 14th to 18th, 2018. 2. All evidence of the similar event, absent of some scraps that only yours truly was able to find via backups, was erased, unlike Event 201, which remained online and was highly publicized as evidence of something. 3. The most relevant and important scientists were at this similar event, unlike Event 201, which had only a few names of significance. And 4. The similar event covered mRNA and DNA vaccination technology in detail of coronaviruses and details of coronavirus spike proteins by the very same people that discovered SARS, such as Malik Peiris, unlike Event 201, which did not get into details of genetic vaccinations or transfections. Yes, such a similar event did happen. It is informally known as the Real Event 201, and you can learn more about it by going to the website realevent201.com. Formally, the event was titled Framing the Response to Emerging Virus Infection, Hong Kong Symposium. Now let us look at the star-studded lineup at this in-person, not virtual, symposium in Hong Kong in 2018. The presenters include, number 1, Dr. Peter Daszak. Most people say Daszak. I think he prefers it pronounced Daszak. Whatever. You say tomato, I say Daszak. A British scientist, Peter Daszak is. A British scientist who was a mid-1990s co-author, in the mid-1990s co-authored with Andrew Wakefield on measles virus research. After his work was cited by Al Gore in 1999, Peter Daszak moved to the United States of America only 2 years before Andrew Wakefield also moved to the United States of America. Daszak went on to work with Nathan Wolfe in the early 2000s and then started the nonprofit EcoHealth Alliance. Some people, like Drastic or Kevin McKernan and more, think that Dr. Daszak is the most responsible person in the world for the COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Daszak was the keynote speaker at Real Event 201 along with Malik Peiris. Also there, again, of course, Malik Peiris, the man who first isolated SARS in 2003. He was also the other keynote speaker at Real Event 201. Remember, 30 papers co-authored with Li-Meng Yan's husband. And he worked with her in-laws. 3, Thomas Hillar. He was the vice president at Gilead who was in charge of antivirals. This is all Real Event 201. And in particular, GS5734 remdesivir, before it was officially named. That's right, using remdesivir for a novel coronavirus was pitched at the Real Event 201 in 2018. Remdesivir was not mentioned at the Look at This Event 201 over here, held in 2019. Another typo. It was the domain program, DOMANE, and I have a link to my page on that, run by Dr. Robert Malone in January 2020 that suggested remdesivir would be an ideal product to use. Something to repurpose maybe for the deadly novel coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2. Also there, Dr. Heinz Ulrich Feldman. He's a German who is the scientific director of the United States of America's Rocky Mountain Lab in Montana. By the way, that means he reports to Anthony Fauci. Heinz Feldman is a longtime collaborator of that same aforementioned Robert Malone, a Sina Bavari, and a Dr. Michael Hone. Heinz Feldman's prize employee is Dr. Emmy DeWitt, of course also not born in the United States of America, who only 14 months after this Real Event 201 conference became the first human on Earth to take an electron microscope photo of the new SARS-CoV-2 virus. How amazing is that? Note that Heinz Feldman also worked with Dr. Guangzhou Qiao, who, that's Xingguo, last name Qiu, when he was at the National Microbiology Laboratory in Canada, and that's the Chinese scientist who was accused, and we'll note her again later, as shuttling Ebola back and forth from Canada to China. Also, there was Ralph Barrick, a once great competitive swimmer who got into the University of North Carolina on a swimming scholarship. Since then, he is known more for his research on coronaviruses and cloning. I like to call him King Clone, jokingly. Dr. Kevin McKernan has blamed the COVID-19 pandemic on both Dr. Peter Daszak and the no-seum technology that was developed by Ralph Barrick. Also, there was Erica Ullman Sapphire, who's a rising star at the Scripps Institute. Erica Ullman Sapphire is a frequent collaborator, and she co-works with him now, of Stephen Schoenberger, who, by the way, is the brother of Thomas Schoenberger, who, curiously, some on the internet have suggested to be the author of QAnon. Now, it seems like a random fact to throw out there, but keep in mind that a lot of people also think that's Steve Bannon. And Steve Bannon money is also a funder of QAnon, and Steve Bannon paid, supposedly, for the airplane ticket for Li-Meng Yan to get to the United States of America, and is even giving her a stage. In other words, several points of contact around Li-Meng Yan are also with this QAnon crap. And you can't ignore that. Also there, and we'll more about this later, Kizzmekia Corbett, Marion Koopmans, Scott Weaver, Michael Diamond, Lin Fa Wang, Bart Hogmans, Sarah T.C. Elliott, and at least 24 more. But in particular, they also included, the speakers included Li-Meng Yan. All but 3 presentations for the conference have been deleted. They were even deleted from the Internet Archive. The 3 presentations that were still available were available because 3 presenters, apparently of the whole crowd, were not physically there, meaning they presented from a remote location. Because a web service called Keystone Symposia was used, that web service apparently had its own archived copy of those presentations. That is how Housatonic ITS was able to download and record those, and only those, 3 sessions. The first of the 3 sessions worth mentioning is Li-Meng Yan. Here she presented at a conference for perhaps the very first time in her entire career. And it was about influenza vaccines. And the audience included Ralph Barrick and Peter Daszak in October 2018. And you can view my copy online on BitChute, Rumble, Odyssey, or stream.gigaohm.bio. The second of the 3 presentations done virtually, remotely, via Keystone Symposia was Kizzmekia Corbett, the young American scientist who Anthony Fauci appointed only 16 months after this event to lead the Moderna mRNA COVID vaccine trials for the VRC, that's the Vaccine Research Center. And this means that Kizzmekia Corbett, typo there, also presented to the same audience that included Ralph Barrick and Peter Daszak in October 2018. Crazier still, and you can see by the still shot here, her session was titled Advancing Towards a General Solution for a Coronavirus Vaccine, where she was even talking about spike or S proteins. The third is a 1-hour panel that includes Marion Koopmans, who, by the way, went on to be on the World Health Organization team that inspected the Wuhan lab for a potential lab leak during COVID-19, and Dr. Malik Pieris himself. Again, that's the Sri Lankan British man who first isolated SARS in 2003 and who has co-authored 30 papers with Li-Meng Yan's husband and several of Li-Meng Yan's in-laws, who again have been living in Rockville, Maryland since 1994. No other event in the world better predicted in detail how COVID-19 would happen and be responded to than the Real Event 201. No other event period. Meaning, every time someone chooses to mention the fake one as opposed to this, they are either being exposed as not knowing or part of the control. Never allow anybody to get away with mentioning Event 201 ever again without highlighting that it's the deception. The real Event 201 is the only one you need to know. And, by the way, it even included the majority of the most important people involved with COVID-19. And again, one of those presenters happened to be Li-Meng Yan. Bullet 3. Now the third thing here, the third big counter-argument of 5 to the original Li-Meng Yan story. Li-Meng Yan did not escape from China or Hong Kong. Specifically, in April 2020, she may have been in the United States of America continuously since 2018. What is the evidence that proves Li-Meng Yan was in Hong Kong in April 2020 and escaped the United States of America? Because of real Event 201, it is likely that Li-Meng Yan was able to present at this event because her session was streamed to the event remotely, just like the other American-based scientist, Kizzmekia Corbett. Look at the backgrounds, look at the lighting, and the laptops of Li-Meng Yan and Kizzmekia Corbett. They are identical because they are in the same location and they are at the same location at the same time. And that location is not Hong Kong. This means Li-Meng Yan and Kizzmekia Corbett were likely not on the stage in Hong Kong for the real Event 201 because neither was in Hong Kong in October 2018. If Kizzmekia is in the United States of America, that in October 2018, that means Li-Meng Yan was also in the United States of America in October 2018. And what are the odds that not only did Li-Meng Yan lie about being in Hong Kong after 2018, but she also lied about having to escape the United States of America in April 2020. But that means she was in the United States of America for the entire stretch of time, unless, of course, she went back, which is inexplicable and unlikely. It also means that Li-Meng Yan has, at a minimum, met Kizzmekia Corbett in October 2018. To clarify, Li-Meng Yan has met the young scientist that Anthony Fauci put in charge of the Moderna COVID-19 mRNA vaccine trials in 2018, while being married to a guy who has 30 papers co-authored with the scientist who first isolated SARS in 2003. Li-Meng Yan presented back-to-back with the person who delivered a session that was titled, and this is Kizzmekia Corbett, Advancing Towards a General Solution for Coronavirus Vaccines, where she was even talking about Spike or S proteins. But more likely, and here's this killer, after the remote presentation, Li-Meng Yan went back to speaking English, and this is speculation without an accent. And this suggests that even Kizzmekia Corbett knew that the entire Li-Meng Yan story was probably scripted and a total lie. They're all in on it. Just an FYI, remember, this is the same Kizzmekia Corbett that both had academic experience under Ralph Barrick before 2020, who was also, by the way, at the real Event 201 and was working for Barney Graham and now Anthony Fauci in 2020, even standing next to President Trump. There she is, folks. As shown here in this May 2020 Washington Post photo from an article titled Kizzmekia Corbett Spent Her Life Preparing for This Moment. Can she create the vaccine to end the pandemic? This 34-year-old African-American woman scientist is a rarity, but with increased visibility comes increased scrutiny. So we are speculating that Li-Meng Yan was in the United States of America long before April 29, 2020, that she was in the United States of America since at least October 2018. And recall what was reviewed earlier. Li-Meng Yan was married in Manhattan, New York City, United States of America in 2014. Her wedding celebration event was in a suburban area near New York City in 2014. Somehow, in spite of claiming to have been born in China and having lived a life in China, she met her future husband, who was working in Hong Kong and whose parents have been in Rockville, Maryland, United States of America since 1994, enough years before their 2014 wedding to get to know him well enough to plan a wedding. How did that happen? Where was she? These are some challenging things to reconcile, and we have every right to be skeptical. Li-Meng Yan lied about leaving her husband when he was already in the United States of America. Bullet 4, the fourth rebuttal section. Is Li-Meng Yan an intelligence operative, perhaps collaborating with India and or the United States of America against the Chinese Communist Party? So it's time to grow up. Li-Meng Yan is not the person she has portrayed herself to be. At a minimum, she has acted a role that has influenced world politics. At the end of this article, I'll bluntly state how exaggeration of a magical RNA pandemic-causing virus in and of itself led to the death of many people. I will note I didn't really follow that part up yet. I need to add a couple more things still. So, we note that Li-Meng Yan rallies against the CCP all of the time. To start, Li-Meng Yan is constantly talking about the Chinese Communist Party. She claims, another typo, make biological weapons and release them. She claims they arrest and beat and kill their own citizens. She claims they are a threat to the entire planet. And the people who provided her support, described as facilitating her travel, but I think that is also a lie, such as Steve Bannon and Miles Guo, are also full-time Chinese Communist Party haters. So if Li-Meng Yan spent so much time in America, possibly many years of her life, exactly how much actual time was she in China to ever get a first-person experience of life in China with the Chinese Communist Party in the first place? Are her parents even in China now? Did her parents leave China recently or years ago? It's not unreasonable to ask in light of discovering her in-laws have been in the United States of America since 1994, working senior jobs in the National Cancer Institute for over 20 years and living in Rockville, Maryland, and co-authoring with Malik Pieris. Also, the majority of the information about a China-origin, lab-origin coronavirus is from India and Hong Kong. And I've only, in the last few weeks recently, realized this. Two places with a combative relationship, some would say, towards China and the Chinese Communist Party. So, we note that in July of 2019, this is in chronological order, by the way, about the nature, where this evidence came from. In July 2019, an Israeli intelligence officer named Lieutenant Colonel Danny Shoham published an article called China's Biological Warfare Program and the Curious Case of Dr. Guan Zhaoqiao. The topic was the arrest of Guan Zhaoqiao, mentioned earlier in this article as a former peer of Heinz Feldman in 2019 in Canada. Lieutenant Colonel Danny Shoham has a PhD from Tel Aviv University. He was a former senior analyst in IDF military intelligence and the Ministry of Defense in Israel. He specializes in chemical and biological warfare in the Middle East and worldwide. Note on Danny Shoham, in 2002, he believed anthrax, or the anthrax used in Amerithrax, was definitely from Iraq. One of the people that provided evidence that led the United States doing what it did. Note that the July 2019 article, Danny Shoham, was written for and was shared by the Manohar Parrikar Institute for Defense Studies and Analyses, the MPIDSA. So according to Wikipedia, the Manohar Parrikar Institute for Defense Studies and Analyses is an Indian think tank for advanced research in international relations, especially defense, strategic, and security issues. It also provides training to civilian, military, and police officers of the Indian government. It is nonpartisan and autonomous and funded by India's Ministry of Defense. On October 17, 2019, Peter Daszak, the keynote speaker of Real Event 201, and the other keynote speaker, Malik Pieris, who has 30 papers co-authored with Li-Meng Yan's husband. In other words, Li-Meng Yan probably knows Peter Daszak. Let's just be honest. She's probably met him before this. It would actually be odd at some point, given the totality of the evidence, if they at least did not have some friendly WebExes before the pandemic. So, Peter Daszak, as this series of tweets shows, is in China hunting pandemic-causing viruses. on the day before the Look Over Here Event 201 in New York City, the fake Event 201. On December 5th, 2019, China's dark future was predicted by Piper Stover on a podcast with Richard Verma, previous United States ambassador to India. Note, Richard Verma also played a key role in saving the Winberg Cancer Research Center, now the Soon-Shiong Center, the only center of excellence for the United States Army's Walter Reed, and where Robert Malone and his wife were installing the IT infrastructure in 2000-2001 while on assignment from the United States Uniformed Health Services. 4. Steve Bennett's War Room, who ultimately financially supported Li-Meng Yan, who is very collaborative with India and very anti-China, begins predicting the pandemic on January 15th. On January 18th, 2020, Snohomish County man finds refuge in the Washington State District overseen by the Indian-born Pramila Jayapal up in Washington State. Remember, remdesivir hype from the real event 201 pays off, where it was actually pitched. On January 20th, 2020, the anti-CCP Steve Bannon and Miles Squall go full-time with their new pandemic show. On January 27th, 2020, someone online named Himalayan Hawk was promoting a Guangzhou Chia article written by Danny Shoham again, but now with extensive photos added to it. I have a link to that, which I've saved. On January 27th, 2020, the China coronavirus Hong Kong medical experts call for draconian measures in city as research estimates are over 44,000 cases in Wuhan. In other words, a lot of these high expectations are coming out of Hong Kong University, not being told by China, coming out of Hong Kong. This isn't just, a friendly state-to-state thing. This is serious, big league geopolitical events. On January 31st, 2020, there's remember that HIV insert paper? There's HIV inserts in coronavirus. So there was a paper called Uncanny Similarity of Unique Inserts in the 2019 novel coronavirus spike protein to HIV-1, GP120, and GHE. So that paper was famously retracted within 36 hours. But curiously, the college that pushed it in New Delhi, India, is only a 24-minute drive from that Manohar Parrikar Institute for Defense Studies and Analyses, the same institute that is also the supporter and the publisher of information from Danny Shoham. On July 30th, 2020, India reported its first cases of COVID-19, and it made very clear that they were all students returning from Wuhan. On February 2nd, 2020, potentially related, is the death, and some would say the assassination, of Francis Allen Plummer, who is a lifelong colleague of the accused Guangzhou Chia, that person who was accused by Danny Shoham. On February 18th, 2020, we got all of these papers coming out about it's definitely not out of a lab. Leo Poon was on those articles. April 17th, 2020, the seroprevalence paper came out in the United States of America regarding COVID-19 using data from Santa Clara County. And the main author on that is Jay Bhattacharya, an Indian national born in India from Stanford, and an Israeli national named Aaron Ben David, who came to the United States in, 1998 or 1999, same time as Sasha Latapova came to the United States. They both went to the same college. I think that's just a coincidence, though. So now I list all this out because factor all of that in with the Li-Meng Yan story. Because then on July 10th, 2020, Li-Meng Yan's whistleblower story, which, if her relationship with her Sri Lankan family is of the nature of geopolitical influence, is yet another part of the campaign to claim COVID-19 is due to a bioweapon from China, and it very specifically has ties to Hong Kong, Sri Lanka, and India. And then on October 2020, I remember that was that Mojang miners thing and the origins of Drastic. Yes, the origins of Drastic are from India itself. It's just too much evidence from one country specifically against China. And Li-Meng Yan's story ties into it. So I'm going to summarize it. Li-Meng Yan probably had no actual insights to anything going on in China in 2019. Just putting aside all of the differences we may have with what was actually happening, she just wasn't there. She probably had no connections, nobody to call. There's no way she could have provided any expert insight on anything or any paper that could be read. And if she did have her name on a paper, it's either made up or she just put on her name that was written by another person. And that's the summary. So clearly I have a few things I found again that I need to clean up. This is what happens when you're doing a real article, I guess. So thank you, everyone, for helping me get to this point. Try to stay positive. Just keep living the example, I guess. And I hope that Li-Meng Yan at some point comes clean and confesses the things that she was not upfront about. I think the totality evidence makes it clear that she was not upfront, not honest about a lot of things. And if there's a few things I've speculated here that I'm incorrect about, technically, that's fine, because having to correct those is going to go a long way to helping know what the real picture is. There is no piece of evidence out there anywhere that's going to contradict everything in this article and the very nature of it. That won't happen. It's beyond that point right now. And it's not the bioweapons that are killing people, folks. It's the lies. It's the lies which lead to the murder. And the murder happened because of the protocols. The murder happened because of the stories being told of out-of-control RNA viruses and what's happening in labs. The lies happened because people are not being allowed to talk about other things, protocols, oxygen, opioid epidemic, which were provided also parts of the foundation that made this whole narrative possible. So that's it, everyone. Stay positive, stay strong, and remember, we got a lot more in common, all of us, than what differentiates us. I don't know what else to say. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Take care. Thank you for supporting me. P.O. Box 505. You can go to Housatonic.Live and get information about my program, how to support. I don't really communicate much on PayPal or Patreon or at all. You know what you get. 6 years in, several thousand videos right now, 2,000 plus. And, one of the largest independently maintained archives on the internet. You know where the money goes. I have everything listed out in my budget. It would be, everything's appreciated. Thank you, everyone. I do have a couple letters I want to go over tomorrow, and I want to thank people for that. So thank you, everyone. Thank you. Take care. God bless.